Of course, that's not so. The judge is the one that appoints the attorneys. We have nothing whatever to do with the appointment of attorneys. We have nothing whatever to do. The judge is the only one to say when they have to go to trial. I think they complained about that. We do handle some pleas of guilty. If a man is indicted by the grand jury, one of my assistants go up and talk to him in the jail and ask him, does he have an attorney? If he says he has, we leave him alone. If he says he wants one, we pass that message on to the judge, and the judge will, in his time, appoint him one. We go further and ask him if he wants to plead guilty or trial. If he says he wants to plead guilty, we tell him what we'll recommend by way of penalty. If he wants that, he gets it. But that can't be much of an issue here because every one of these were tried before a jury where they pled not guilty. The jury felt them guilty and sentenced them, the lowest one to 25 and the biggest one to life.
This is where the tragedy struck in the pre-dawn hours of this early Monday morning. First, an explosion here at 8300 Jerrie Jo Lane in North Richland Hills. 2.5 hours later, a second blast ripped this home next door at 8304. I talked with North Richland Hills Fire Chief Dean Holland about the sequence of events.
Arrival of our first companies at 5:04, they discovered that the residence was totally involved, and we did have persons inside the structure that had been unable to get out. We attempted rescue, but because of heat and smoke and gases, were driven back. We weren't able to enter the residence at all. This is where we had the 2 fatalities. And we tapped the fire out at 5:09, or correction, at 6:21. We asked for a second alarm at 5:09 on this residence. While we were investigating the alarm after we had tapped the fire out, the residence at 8304 Jerrie Jo exploded at 7:39.
It was right next door to it.
Yes, sir. This was due east. Apparently there were large accumulations and concentrations of gas inside the garage area. The lady that lived at that residence turned off the garage light, and apparently the spark from the light switch ignited the gas inside the garage.
For several hours thereafter, workmen and fire officials stayed on the scene here, checking for further gas leakage. 2 more areas of gas leakage were discovered. The pipes were capped off. During that time, a total of 5 square blocks around this area was sealed off and the residents evacuated. The tragic events here today in North Richland Hills will be remembered for a long time. There's one final terrible ironic twist to this story. Today marked the first day of Fire Prevention Week. Jerry Park, Channel 8 News on the Move, North Richland Hills.
Well, you know, I'm going to have to be convinced. I understand there are a great many people of a great deal of wealth in Texas. And they also indulge on occasion in a great deal of conversation. But in baseball, one has to depend on the average fellow, the fellow who's earning a buck. And I'm still to be convinced that Dallas will be all that good after a year or two, and the enthusiasm is worn off, and the ball club doesn't get any better, and then we'll see what happens.
The 90th annual meeting of the American Transportation Association is currently underway in Dallas. At a pre-noon news conference, Department of Transportation Secretary John Volpe denied there is a rift developing between those companies who are trying to market a surface transportation data collection system. This would be under the department's Transman program, or transit management. I asked about a statement issued by Boeing in which they said they are temporarily suspending their marketing operations due to a problem with licensing agreements.
I am familiar with the fact that there has been some short interruption in the program. I don't think it's a permanent disruption at all.
What is that disruption, sir?
I am not aware of the particulars on it. I can't keep abreast of every one of the details of 7 operating administrations with 110,000 employees, but I do know and had heard that there was some interruption at this time.
May I refresh your memory, sir, that maybe it is a complaint filed by a competitor of Boeing about some of the hardware in use?
I have no knowledge of it.
Are you familiar with any of the competitors of Boeing in this endeavor?
Oh, I know of 4 or 5 competitors of Boeing in the mass transportation field.
Sir, the president of Trip Incorporated, which is associated with Boeing for this licensing, is Mr. Michael Blurton. Was he formerly associated with the Department of Transportation?
Michael, what was the last name?
Blurton.
Not that I know of.
Well,
he was in the past administration. He has not been in ours in any significant position, at least.
Has there, to your knowledge, been any allegation that Mr. Blurton developed some of this hardware while an employee of the Department of Transportation, and thus it would be free information?
I know nothing about it.
I've
never heard the name.
You've not heard of any conflict between Boeing or any of its competitors' references?
I have not.
There are very few cities in the nation using this Transman program to help their transit systems at the present time, one of those being Dallas, Oakland, California, and Kent, Ohio, which is the hometown of Trip Incorporated. Wilson Driggs, manager of the Dallas system, says it has worked very well here now that they've gotten the bugs out. But if for any reason Boeing Trip cannot market their equipment, they'll just have to try someone else. From the Statler Hilton Hotel in downtown Dallas, this is Jim Mitchell, Channel 8 News.
While city officials, elected and appointed, have to worry about today, especially finances, they also have to take a long, hard look at tomorrow. Today, at the Texas Municipal League, officials heard from 2 other officials who both had harsh words about what the future might hold. First was Dallas City Attorney Alex Bickley, who spoke heatedly about cities sticking together and about letting legislators know their ideas.
No one individual or no group of individuals down there can adequately represent you. For that reason, we in Dallas have taken the attitude that we're going to be there. We're going to have our elected individuals there when it's necessary and when there is a real issue that concerns us. We're going to have our department heads there. We're going to take the time and the money it takes to protect and take care of local self-government. Now, this is what we've got to do, and this is what you have to do.
Following Alex Bickley on that program was one of those legislators, Senator Ralph Hall from Rockwall. Senator Hall had some criticisms of his own, which he aimed toward Austin.
I think if we had annual sessions and unlimited duration of these annual sessions, I know of no reason to relegate us to 120 days or 140 days. There's no need to telescope bills through the legislature through the use of floor reports. And if you recollect, the Sharpstown bill was floor reported through the Senate in a special session at the break of day and under the apparent recommendation of the governor of the state. Frankly, I think we should still be in session in trying to solve the problems of this state, to remove the riders and the sleepers from the appropriations bill, to correct the problems that were put in the ethics bill, to fund the needs of mental health.
Senator Ralph Hall says the most pressing need in Texas is for the state to have a sound economic policy, and he more than hinted that official Texas is becoming more and more upset with the Securities and Exchange Commission investigation. Conspicuous by his absence here today is House Speaker Gus Mutcher, who was to have been on a legislative panel with Bickley and Hall. Speculation here is that Mutcher decided to stay in Austin to combat today's political moves by the so-called Dirty 30. This is Phil Reynolds, Channel 8 News on the Move at the Texas Municipal League Convention in Houston.
or the feeling about the way the district attorney's office conducts whether or not to try a person, or whether or not to file a second offender or habitual case on a person is entirely arbitrarily up to Henry Wade and nobody else. If he likes you or you want to make a deal with him, then he'll let you go ahead and plead guilty for a specific amount of time, regardless of the circumstances of the case or how good a case they've got on you. But if you don't accept the bargain he wants to give you, well, then he'll re-indict you for a second offender or a habitual if you're eligible to be re-indicted for such. But instead of doing that to begin with, he didn't do it. At first, you just indicted on a straight charge, and then he comes up and tries to send cop-out men up to you after you lay around in jail for a while, trying to entice you or coerce you into accepting some sentence that he wants you to have. And if you refuse to accept it, well, then they threaten you with a second offender or a habitual. And if you're not fortunate enough to have the money to hire a better attorney, well, then chances are really high against you of obtaining a conviction.
Mack, what about the men you represent out of the tank you're in?
Well, there are quite a few guys up there on the 11N2 as myself, and it's a very few of them that have money and things to hire a lawyer, and there's quite a few of them that come in and they get injustice. There are many guys that come in and they're unable to hire their own attorney, and most of them, when they're appointed attorneys and things to represent them on trials and on appeals, they get to see them very little. Sometimes some of them get to see them maybe once or twice before they go to trial.
Well, I can't say that it was out of control, because within limits, it has been within control, but at the same time, the people themselves have been erratic in their behavior and have caused quite a bit of disturbance, yelling, screaming, throwing things, and breaking windows, and starting fires with paper and mattress covers, things like that.
There's not really that much up there that'll burn or that you can tear loose and throw, is there?
No, there really isn't, but it's enough to attract the attention of the people outside, and that's what they want, is let the people outside know that we're having a difficult time down here.
Why?
Well, just to get the public interested in what's going on is the only thing I can think of. I don't know of any real reason.
Where do you go from here? Is it just a mopping up operation now?
Yes, sir. We'll have to mop up, clean up, and then we'll have to start rearranging our prisoners and putting them, relocating them. In other words, try to get them mixed up so that they won't be together like they were before.
Obviously, this time you're handling it differently from the way you did last time. What steps are you going to take after you've got it settled down to keep it from happening again?
The shifting around of prisoners and sending them different places, and I'm sure that the courts will decide now to try to get some of these people into institutions where they can be held better.
The outside elements, gentlemen, cannot run this jail. Law enforcement has got to operate. We've operated as fairly and as on as equitable basis as we can. We were not able to do it that way, so we had to do it the other way.
Are you going to meet with them?
No, I don't intend to meet with them.
What way did you choose to do it, Sheriff? You said
we had to do it this way. We used water. Of course, we had quite a few fires. I think we probably have lost about maybe 2 or 3 dozen mattresses. We had to extinguish a lot of fires because in a forced air ventilation building such as this, it can cause a lot of problems. It's dangerous, the fumes are.
Was anybody hit? Was anybody hurt?
Were there any injuries?
Those folks, those people, some of the officers were injured. I don't think any of them seriously. Some of the prisoners may be. We're making a survey of that right now. But those that were armed, and some of them were with all types of weapons, and I think you saw those weapons once before, the same types.
What type of weapons, Sheriff? Knife?
There was one knife. There were some other weapons, the jagged edges of broomsticks and things of this nature. There are bits of metal that are sharpened. considerable number of spoons that have been sharpened and things of this nature.
Sheriff,
Those are the
can I
type
ask
weapons.
you in all honesty, could Henry Tatum's article in the Morning News Sunday have triggered this?
I don't know.
Luciano, what do you think about the new Italian divorce laws? Are you pleased with the way they've worked out now?
It worked out fine with me because otherwise I would have been a bigamist, which means I would have gone to jail.
Do you think that the American divorce laws should be changed to be more liberal as they are in Italy now?
You must be kidding me. America is the only place where you can get married in the morning and get divorced in the afternoon. How much more liberal can you be? In Italy, you have to have a 5 years record of separation, or your husband or your wife, whatever, has to be, how do you say, in jail or in a mental institution for the rest of their lives, or you have to have been married to a foreign citizen, and then you can get your divorce. But I mean, it's not that easy.
What do you think about American men? How do you rate them with other men around the world?
Well, I like American men. I do. I married one. I divorced one. But I do. I mean, I don't want to go into private things, but I could prove to you that American men are my men.
Take it you mean a better attorney than a court-appointed lawyer?
Well, most court-appointed lawyers are not lawyers that you would hire yourself if you got into trouble.
Can I ask you in all honesty, if you had your brothers on a court-appointed attorney, who would you want?
I don't have a court-appointed attorney. I'm satisfied with my attorney, but you asked me the complaint on the tank that I'm on, and that is a complaint about the prisoners that I'm incarcerated with.
The convention itself is here in Houston, but much of the action seems to be coming from Dallas people. Committees meeting in so-called smoke-filled rooms yesterday and today at the Texas Municipal League include those on the future of Texas cities, revenue for Texas cities, and laws that affect Texas cities. Dallas people either head or greatly influence all these groups. The convention is always a time for politicking, as you can see from some of the 2,400 people here in the lobby of the hotel milling around waiting for dinner. Some of the heaviest politicking will come tomorrow morning when Dallas City Councilman Gary Weber presents a tax reform plan for the state's largest cities. Phil Reynolds, Channel 8 News on the Move at the Texas Municipal League Convention in Houston.
I don't know anything about it. I've seen very little of it, actually. I am hoping to have a few hours off, today and tomorrow to go around a little bit.
Before you came to Texas, what was your impression of this state?
Well, even in Italy, we know stories about Texans. I mean, we know that it's the biggest state, and everything is bigger than anywhere else. And I just had the impression that I would only meet very tall men, and all the apples I would eat would be bigger than the ordinary apples. I don't know yet. I've only met tall men here, really, I did. But that's all I can say about it.
things when?
Boeing Company is a firm an aerospace firm that was one of the firms that we looked to in connection with the very serious unemployment in parts of the nation where they operate, along with 2 or 3 other aerospace firms, and have gotten into the mass transit, public transportation field. They will be considered for additional work and any work for which they're qualified, along with other people who are already in the transit industry. We're not saying that we're going to just forget the people in the transit industry and just look to the aerospace firms for our solutions. But they do have a capacity, and we will continue to use them so long as they meet our requirements and cost-wise are effective as well.
Do you know, sir, that Boeing did not set up its demonstration here because of this pending action?
I've heard something about that this morning, yes.
That they had spent something like $40,000, I understand, for equipment that is not
allowed to show? Well, you get into details, my friend, that I just can't possibly keep track of. As the Secretary of the Department with 110,000 employees, as I say, I can't possibly try to keep track of that kind of operation.
Sadness. I'm very sad. I presume one is very happy in Dallas to have a Major League team, if I may use the term so loosely. But I really believe that the senators belong in Washington, and I'm regretful. I made an attempt to purchase them, and I was unsuccessful. I understand Mr. Short's position, and I can't say that I completely find it at fault, but nonetheless, I do believe that the American League owners, with 2 exceptions, behaved with a great deal of short-sightedness. That's all I feel about it.
There has been, in recent years, well, not really so much recently, over the past decade perhaps, a number of franchise transfers.
Matter of fact, I transferred one from St. Louis.
Right, I remember
that. But you see, there was a slight difference in that they had the Cardinals, and we didn't take baseball away from the city. I find no beef with them if they leave a club there. But when they take it to strip it devoid of baseball, I think that's wrong, and I think it's particularly wrong because attendance hasn't been that bad in Washington. And they supported pretty well. I hope that Dallas supports a bad ball club as well as the Senators have historically.
Do you doubt that might happen?